I never planned to make headlines. I just wanted peace. After years of city noise, I finally found my escape. A modest, cedar-shingled home on 2 acres of shaded land in a quiet Georgia suburb. Bought it with the money I saved teaching high school chemistry for 17 years. It was supposed to be my sanctuary. A place where my daughter, Nia, could run barefoot on real grass and climb trees the way I used to. A place where being black didn't mean being watched. The neighborhood was postcard pretty. Rows of white-painted homes with perfect hedges. Blue flags on mailboxes, SUVs in driveways, and every Saturday morning, the gentle hum of leaf blowers and white laughter echoing across the cul-de-sac. We were the only black family on the street. Nobody said it out loud, but you could feel it in the way conversations paused when I walked by. Like they had to recalibrate. Till I smiled. I waved. I brought over banana bread to the woman next door, who stared at it like I'd handed her poison. Her name is Margaret Callington. She insists everyone call her Ms. Callington, even the mailman. She's the HOA president and self-appointed protector of community standards. Platinum blonde bob, tight smile, clothes too pressed to be comfortable. She first knocked on my door with a clipboard and a tone. "Your porch light is too bright," she said. "It disrupts the neighborhood ambience." I just finished installing it. Solar-powered motion sensor. My mom had bought it for me after someone egged my garage the first week we moved in. I kept it on. She didn't like that. But the real trouble didn't start until Nia named the tree. We called it Big Mama, an ancient southern live oak that stood at the edge of our backyard, its thick coiled branches stretching wide like a hug. Generations must have grown under it. It shaded our garden, our hammock, our laughter. Arborist told me it was worth over $250,000. Not just for its age but for its protected status under state conservation laws. I didn't know trees could be priceless until I had one. Then a few weeks ago I noticed something odd. Tiny orange flags in the grass near Big Mama's roots. A fresh patch of spray paint on the trunk. I thought it was a mistake. A city crew may be checking for lines. But something about it itched at me. Something in the way Miss Callington had been staring lately, not just at the house but past it. At Big Mama. I brushed it off. I shouldn't have. Because the calm I moved here for? It was already cracking. And I hadn't realized yet that Margaret wasn't just keeping tabs on porch lights. She was coming for something bigger. Something sacred. And she didn't plan to ask permission. The next time I saw the flags, there were more of them. Bright orange markers staked like a warning all around Big Mama's base. Someone had placed them in a perfect circle about 20 feet out like they were outlining something. Nia was the first to ask. "Why are those flags back, Mama?" she said, pressing her small hand against the living room window. "Is someone digging?" I swallowed the knot in my throat. "I'll find out, baby." But I already knew. I walked to the edge of the backyard and crouched near one of the markers. The earth was still damp. Recently disturbed. I scanned the tree line between my lot and the neighboring property. Miss Callington's property. Her white picket fence sat perfectly aligned just behind Big Mama. I could hear the soft tink of wind chimes and the occasional bark of her Pomeranian. I knocked on her door. She answered like she was expecting me. Lipstick fresh, posture stiff, smile like polished glass. "Miss Callington," I started, trying to keep my tone even, "do you know anything about the survey flags on my property?" "Oh, those?" she said, feigning surprise. "The HOA hired a private contractor to inspect the easements. You wouldn't believe how many residents have encroachments they aren't even aware of. Big Mama's not on an easement. That's debatable." She pursed her lips. "The tree's awfully close to the property line. And its roots are threatening my foundation. I've already had 2 plumbers confirm." I blinked. "You didn't think to mention that before staking flags in my yard?" Her smile dropped, only slightly. "You're new here. I don't expect you to know how things work yet." That yet landed like a slap. "I bought this land outright. I had it surveyed before closing. I'm sure your people did a fine job." "My people." I stared at her for a moment longer, letting her words sink into my skin like acid. Then I turned and walked away. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about her tone, polite on the surface but laced with something sharper underneath. A warning. Not just about the tree but about me. About where she thought I stood in this community. About how quickly she was trying to erase both. The next morning I filed a complaint with the city. They told me no permits had been pulled. No work orders issued. Which meant whoever was marking my property wasn't doing it legally. But that didn't stop the next flag from appearing. This time it was closer to the tree. And this time there was a small pink ribbon tied to the lowest branch of Big Mama, like a tag. Nia saw it before I did. She was quiet that evening, clutching her drawing pad tighter than usual. "She's trying to hurt Big Mama," she whispered. I didn't want to believe it. But in my gut I already knew the truth. This wasn't just a disagreement about property lines. This was war. And Margaret Callington had just drawn her first blood. By Monday morning I had a folder thick with documentation. Property lines, photos of the tree, timestamps of every flag appearance. I'd even printed off the Georgia State Tree Protection Act. Big Mama wasn't just old, she was legally protected. Cutting her down wasn't just wrong. It was a crime. I marched to the HOA office, which was, predictably, a room tucked inside the local clubhouse with floral curtains and uncomfortable chairs. Margaret sat behind a polished desk, sipping from a mug that said "Number 1 President." I placed the folder in front of her. Controlled. "I'm formally requesting that you cease all activity near my tree," I said. "Any further disturbance without a legal permit will be considered trespassing and reported to the police." Margaret didn't even look at the folder. Her lips curled into something that might have once been a smile. "Oh dear," she said, "you seem upset." "I'm not upset. I'm making a legal request." She took a slow sip of her coffee. "The HOA has received multiple complaints about that tree. How it sheds, the pollen, the potential danger in storms. We're simply exploring options to maintain neighborhood safety." I blinked. "You're exploring options on my private property? There's a clause in the covenant. Section 14.6. She tapped a manila binder with a French-tipped nail. "The HOA may take action if any structure, including flora, is deemed hazardous to neighboring properties." "That tree is not hazardous." "That's your opinion." "It's the city's opinion too." I called them. Her smile wavered just barely. Then she leaned in. "Look," she said, lowering her voice. "You're not from around here. I get it. You want space, quiet, nature. But this is a community. We follow certain standards. And if you can't align with that, well, it creates tension." She said tension like it tasted sour in her mouth. I didn't respond. I picked up my folder and left. But something in her tone stuck with me. "You're not from around here." Not just words, an accusation. I didn't belong. Not because of the tree. Because of who I was. What I looked like. What I represented. That night I installed a camera. Just one facing the tree. Discreet. Motion activated. I told Nia it was for the birds. 3 nights later I caught her. A grainy video, time-stamped at 2:13 a.m. Margaret Callington, in a bathrobe and garden gloves, walking along the edge of my property with a flashlight. She paused by Big Mama, glanced around and drove a small wooden stake into the ground. Then she walked back the way she came. I filed a police report. The officer, a young white guy with too much cologne, took one look at the footage and frowned. "Not much we can do unless there's damage," he said. "Technically she didn't trespass. You don't have a fence. She was on my land." "Yeah, but without a clear physical barrier it's tricky. Best you can do is send a cease and desist." "So if I walk into her yard at 2 a.m. that's fine?" He didn't answer. I contacted a lawyer. Not to sue, yet, but to draft a formal legal notice. We sent it via certified mail. I knew she got it. He signed for it. 2 days later the orange flags were gone. Relief bloomed in my chest. Until the bulldozer showed up. It rumbled into the cul-de-sac one humid Thursday morning, bright yellow and loud. The contractor said they were clearing brush near the easement and removing obstructions. When I asked who authorized the work, he pulled out a document. Signed by Margaret Callington, HOA president. It didn't matter that it wasn't her land. It didn't matter that there was no permit. She used her title like a shield. Like it made her untouchable. I stood in front of Big Mama, arms crossed, body trembling. "You're not touching this tree," I told the driver. He looked unsure. Hesitated. Then Margaret appeared, sunglasses on, HOA binder in hand. "Move, Miss Jordan," she said. "You're obstructing authorized maintenance. Call the police." "Oh, I already did." The cops showed up 10 minutes later. 2 cruisers. Lights off but presence heavy. One of them, the same officer who brushed me off earlier, stepped out and walked straight to Margaret. They laughed. As I stood there in my front yard, protecting something sacred while they planned its destruction. That was the moment I realized. Margaret didn't care about rules. Or laws. Or trees. This wasn't about community. This was about control. And she wasn't going to stop. But neither was I. Margaret stood in my yard like she owned it, arms folded, her wide-brimmed sun hat casting a smug shadow across her face. Behind her, the bulldozer idled, an ugly beast waiting to tear down decades of life in one careless swing. "This is your final warning," she said. "Step aside or be cited for obstruction." I didn't move. I didn't blink. Neighbors had gathered by now. Dozens of them. Some with phones. Some whispering. Most pretending this was just another HOA dispute and not what it really was. An act of racial erasure dressed in legalese and entitlement. She turned to the contractor. "Begin." He hesitated. "Miss Kellington, I'm still not sure this tree is on the easement." She snapped. "I signed the order. That's all the permission you need." The bulldozer crept forward, steel claws rising like the jaws of a machine ready to devour. That's when I stepped forward. And smiled. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," I said loud enough for the crowd to hear. She scoffed. "You've already tried threats. This is over." "No, Margaret," I said, voice calm, measured, certain. "It's just beginning." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. New documents fresh from my lawyer. I held it up high enough for the cameras. "This," I said, "is a court-ordered injunction. Signed by Judge Whitaker at 8:04 this morning. Any attempt to touch that tree will be considered destruction of protected property, and contempt of court." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Margaret's face twitched. "You're bluffing." "Try me." I handed a copy to the officer on scene. This wasn't the same one as before. This one, Officer Daniels, had a clipboard, a body cam, and an actual sense of protocol. He read through the papers, brows rising. "This is legit." He turned to Margaret. "Ma'am, you'll need to stand down." Immediately. Her face flushed crimson beneath the hat. "You can't be serious," she hissed. "She forged that. She followed the law," I said, stepping closer. "While you trespassed, harassed, lied, and used your position to manipulate contractors into destroying private property. All on camera." I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. A short clip began to play on the portable speaker. It was her. Margaret. In the middle of the night, placing markers. Talking to someone on the phone, saying, "We'll say it's for safety." She won't fight back. She's one of those types, always too polite to cause a scene. The words rang out through the yard like gunfire. Margaret's lips parted. Her eyes darted to the crowd, to the phones now recording her every twitch. "That's taken out of context," she stammered. You hacked me." "Nope. My motion-activated camera caught it. And I've already handed it to the city attorney." The officer looked at her again, differently this time. "We're gonna need you to come with us for questioning." Margaret backed away, stumbling slightly in her sandals. "This is a mistake. I'm the HOA president. And I'm a homeowner," I said, stepping beside Big Mama and placing my hand on her bark. "Who knows her rights?" The silence that followed was deafening. The contractor shut off the bulldozer. Neighbors lowered their phones. Margaret, still sputtering, was escorted to the squad car. Her voice cracked as she tried to shout something about neighborhood standards, but the crowd wasn't listening anymore. They were watching me. And for the first time since I moved here, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. The officer handed me a copy of the report and nodded respectfully. "You did everything right," he said. "Not everything," I replied. "But enough." Nia ran into the yard seconds later, barefoot and beaming. She wrapped her arms around my waist and stared up at the tree. "Big Mama's okay?" I kissed her forehead. "She's better than okay, baby. She's still standing." And so were we. Margaret's heels clicked against the pavement as she was escorted to the squad car, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. "You people, this is harassment. I've served this community for over 12 years. The officer didn't respond. He closed the door behind her, slow and deliberate, before turning to me. We'll investigate the trespassing, forged authorization, and potential civil rights violations. You'll be contacted soon. But that was just the beginning. By the next morning, the video clip of Margaret skulking around my yard had gone viral. A neighbor, I later learned her name was Alyssa, had uploaded it to a local Facebook group with the caption, HOA president caught red-handed on black homeowner's land at 2 a.m. #Justice for Big Mama. Within hours, the post exploded across neighborhood forums, then Reddit, then Twitter. Thousands of comments poured in, some in disbelief, others in outrage. A few trolls tried to defend Margaret, but the evidence was too damning. And I wasn't done yet. I held a press conference on my own front lawn. Nia filmed it with my phone. I stood in front of Big Mama, sunlight streaming through her branches like a protective canopy, as reporters clustered on the sidewalk. This isn't just about a tree, I began, voice steady, clear. It's about what happens when people in power, people who look like Margaret, believe they can weaponize rules, codes, and positions of authority to intimidate those who don't look like them. I held up the forged HOA work order. She falsified documents to authorize the destruction of private property. I held up the injunction. She ignored a court order. I played the audio clip again, the one where Margaret dismissed me as one of those types. I paused, letting the words settle. And she did all of this because she thought I'd be too quiet, too polite, too scared to fight back. The crowd was silent. Then came the applause. Not loud. Not wild. But real. Neighbors I'd never spoken to before came up afterward. Some apologized. Others offered support. A few admitted they'd always had a weird feeling about Margaret's leadership but had been too afraid to speak up. And then came the bombshell. A retired city surveyor named Mr. Hal Whitmore showed up at my door later that afternoon with a dusty map case under his arm. He was white, in his 70s, and wore a Veterans for Justice cap. I saw your video, he said. That tree. I marked it on the original development map back in '98. It's protected under the Heritage Flora Clause. The HOA has no jurisdiction. I blinked. Why hasn't anyone said that before? He grunted. Margaret's been sitting on that knowledge for years. Told me she'd take care of it when I tried to file it with the HOA archives. I filmed our conversation. Then I uploaded it. Within 24 hours, Margaret's empire began to collapse. Emails leaked. Former board members came forward with stories of intimidation, discrimination, and falsified votes. One woman claimed Margaret removed her from the landscaping committee after she objected to a beautification order that targeted the yards of only black and brown residents. Another neighbor, a Latino father of 3, shared how Margaret reported him to animal control for suspicious dog behavior. After his Labradoodle barked during a barbecue, people started digging. Turned out Margaret had been manipulating board elections for years, tampering with ballots, coercing votes, and even misallocating HOA funds. A local news station ran the headline, HOA president faces allegations of racism, fraud, and abuse of power. Margaret tried to spin it. She released a statement through her lawyer. I was only acting in the best interest of the community. This has nothing to do with race. But the damage was done. The city launched an investigation. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted, unanimously, to remove her as president. That same night, a group of residents gathered outside her home with signs. No justice, no HOA. We stand with Jordan. Leave Big Mama alone. Margaret didn't come outside. 2 days later, her house was listed for sale. I watched from my porch as the for sale sign went up, the irony as sweet as Georgia peaches. The woman who tried to erase me, who thought her title gave her the right to decide who belonged, was now the one packing up and disappearing. Nia sat beside me, drawing trees in her sketch pad. You think she'll go to jail? She asked. I shrugged. Maybe. But honestly, I don't care. She looked up at me. You're not mad anymore? I smiled. No. I'm just done letting people like her take up space in my head. Because Margaret didn't win. She didn't even come close. And as the sun dipped behind Big Mama's branches, casting long shadows that kissed the porch, I realized something profound. She tried to cut me down. But I'd only grown stronger. 3 weeks later, Margaret's mugshot hit the evening news. She looked nothing like the woman who once strutted through this neighborhood like a self-appointed queen. No sun hat. No pearls. Just a pale, pinched face and the faint smudge of mascara beneath red, puffy eyes. The anchor's voice was crisp. Former HOA President Margaret Callington was officially charged today with felony trespassing, falsification of legal documents, and destruction of protected property. Civil rights investigations are ongoing. Justice didn't always wear a badge or come with a gavel, but today it showed up. Loud and clear. I stood in my yard again, barefoot in the soil, eyes lifted to Big Mama's branches. She was still scorched in places, scarred from the near miss, but alive. And strong. Just like me. A new mail carrier passed by and waved. "Miss Jordan. You're famous." I laughed. Not famous. Just finally heard. Behind me, Nia painted on a canvas propped against our porch rail. She'd started capturing Big Mama in oil paints, green and gold streaks swirling like flames. "She's not just a tree," Nia said the day before. "She's history. Ours." And now the whole neighborhood knew it too. The HOA was gutted and rebuilt. A new president was elected. A black woman named Carla who moved in 6 months before me but had never dared to challenge Margaret. "You lit the match," she told me with tears in her eyes. And I finally stepped into the fire. She wasn't alone. Residents who once stayed silent started speaking up. At community meetings they apologized for what they hadn't seen, or hadn't wanted to. An elderly white couple came to my door with a peach cobbler and quiet remorse. "We didn't know," they said. "But we should have." Even Alyssa, the neighbor who posted the video, admitted, "I used to think HOA rules were neutral. But now I see who they're enforced against." Change didn't just knock, it barged in and settled. One afternoon while I was watering the rose bushes, I noticed a letter sticking out from our fence gate. No postage. No signature. Just a folded piece of paper with neat cursive ink. I truly believed I was helping this neighborhood. I didn't see myself as the villain. But maybe that was the problem. I never had to. I see it now. I'm sorry. It was unsigned. But I didn't need a name. I stood there a long time, letter in hand, heart beating with something that felt like closure. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But release. That night Nia and I had dinner under Big Mama. Picnic style, stars above, cicadas humming. She leaned against me and whispered, "I'm glad she's still here." I looked at the great oak, moonlight brushing her branches like a lullaby. Me too. Because Margaret thought tearing her down would tear me down. But all it did was wake the fighter in me. And now the whole world knew. You don't silence us. You don't erase us. And you damn sure don't cut us down. Not without a storm coming your way.